And now, an Envision Financial podcast with Luke Smith on Canberra's 2CC.
Yes, it's Friday afternoon once again, and time to welcome to the studio from Envision Financial, Luke Smith. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I tell you what, the weeks just fly by, don't they?
Feels like I'm here every other Friday.
It's true, it is. Now, today we're going to ask a very simple question. Who can add money to super and when can they do it?
Yeah.
Now, I presume I can add money to my own super. Is that what you're talking about here?
Well, yeah, look, exactly. I've had a number of people sort of come in with some really outlandish assumptions. So we're going to sort of demystify some things that seem to be water cooler talk, because it could be really expensive if you assume something and found out later that you missed out on opportunity just because somebody gave you the wrong information. So we know that there are two ways you can put money into super: deductible contribution, non-deductible contribution. Concessional, not concessional. Deductible, not deductible. Concessional is just a fancy word for deductible. $30,000 to become $32,500 1 July, and non-concessional $120,000, which is the current rules as we speak at the moment. So we always need to think, why am I putting the money in? Do I want to lower my tax? Great. Do I want to add money that I've got from somewhere else to pay nothing putting it in and bolster my super before I start a pension or retire? Our first port of call is, why am I adding the money to super? We then need to say, once we've made that decision, am I eligible? And this is where things get murky out there at Mahjong on a Friday afternoon with the ladies. I had a guy come in yesterday and say, well, I've retired, but I'm going to sell some properties. I'll be good if I could have put that and got a deduction, but I can't. Are you 67? He goes, no. I said, okay, so why can't you get a deduction? Well, I'm not allowed to. Says who? Let's clear that up. If you are under 67, you are eligible to put money into super and claim a tax deduction up to the annual limit that applies to your situation, or the 5-year look-back scenario where you're under 500,000, which we've touched on in other shows. You can do that. There is no need or requirement to be gainfully employed. People seem, for some reason, to tie together eligibility to contribute with gainful employment. And I can say unequivocally that under the age of 67, it has nothing to do with your ability to add the money to the fund.
So I can retire at 57 if I want, but I can still add money to my super.
100%. And you can do it two ways. You can make deductible contributions up to the annual limit of 30,000, which you would have done when you were working. You could also then make a non-concessional contribution up to 75, where you are not working and you are under the specific limits that allow you to do that. So 120,000 or 360,000 in one go, and you are well below the total super balance threshold to ensure you are eligible. So we need to separate eligible to how much, because they're two very different things. So if you know you're eligible, I'm 73, I've just downsized my house and I've put $300,000 in under the downsizer legislation, you can do that with no age restrictions. So you could be 85, downsize your house, throw $300,000 into super, no problems. You could make a $360,000 non-concessional contribution, no problems. Again, within threshold limits. There's nothing that gets measured against the threshold for downsizer. For non-concessional contributions, there's the total super balance. You can make a non-concessional contribution to superannuation and be in excess of your transfer balance cap. So another misconception, which we've touched on in previous shows, is transfer balance cap and total super balance are the same things. Transfer balance cap is your measure of tax-free pension income you can draw. Total super balance is the total amount of super you have and your eligibility to put it in. So you could have a pension coming out of super, be at your transfer balance cap. Can you put money into superannuation provided you're under the total super balance rules? The answer is yes, you can make the contribution. Is that deemed an excess component under the transfer balance cap? Yes, it is. So it's not treated as a tax-free pension, but 15% tax in super may be better than tax at your marginal rate. So we always need to come back and say, why am I making the contribution? what type of contribution do I want to make, and am I eligible at my stage of life to be able to make it? And I think that's where things get murky for people, because some generalities get applied. And I think breaking those down is really important. We spoke a few weeks back about the catch-up concessional legislation. I have less than $500,000 in super, so I can look back a maximum of 5 years, work out what I haven't used in each of those financial years, and then decide how I put a deductible contribution into super. Do I do it in one go? Do I do it over 2 or 3 years? What's the time frame that I have to be able to execute that legislation? And your eligibility for that legislation is the balance of your total super, including pensions, at 30 June of the year before. So 30 June 2026, I've got $490,000 and I've got $50,000 of space in my catch-up window. I could put $50,000 in the next financial year, push my balance over $500,000, even if my balance was $505,000 in September when I did it. A lot of people come in and go, well, I can't put it in now because I've missed my window. I'm at 506. But at 30 June, you were 495. So again, that assumption that you can't could be really expensive because you've missed out on a tax-deductible contribution that could have saved you a lot of money. So we need to make sure that people understand what they can do and how they can do it. A couple of months back, we spoke about total super balance. Currently $2 million. And depending on how close you are to that $2 million will then influence how much you can put in. I get more often than not, I'm at 1.9, I'll throw in 360,000. No. You could do 120,000. You couldn't do any more because you're too close to the $2 million limit. And there's a set tiered threshold that allows you to work up from about 1.76 million, do 360, do 240, do 120, and if you're at 2 million, the doors are closed. So yes, you might want to put it in there. Yes, you might say, well, I'm 73, I can. Then you need to say, well, am I eligible and how much can I put in depending on my total super balance? So there are a number of hurdles that you need to check, not just, oh, I'm under 75 and I can put it in, because you can get that really wrong and the ATO will penalise you quite brutally. So don't be that person.
So when we ask who can add money to their super, the answer really is pretty much everybody, except with their personal circumstances, there will be perhaps thresholds, caps, limits that need to be considered.
Exactly.
That determine how much you can put in.
Exactly.
The other thing I'd like to raise, though, is that I'm of the understanding that when you actually start an income stream from your superannuation, you're no longer in accumulation phase. Now you're in income phase.
Yep.
You can't put money in then, can you?
So I like that. See, shows you listen. Technically, the legislation says that once you start an income stream, you cannot add to its capital value. So let's have an example. I'm going to retire on the 1st of February and I've got $1 million in my super fund and I start a pension. And then in April I go, wow, I'm bored. I'm going to go back to work. All right? If you're silly enough to do that, great. But let's say you did. Your work is going to need to put money into superannuation. They cannot make your superannuation guarantee payments into that account-based pension because it has its own tax structure and it has an imaginary fence around it because it's deemed an income stream. In that scenario, you'd need to open up another account, have it in accumulation phase so it could receive money from your employer. The same could be said, let's say you didn't go back to to work, you'd started your pension, then all of a sudden you inherited some money. You have the ability to stop the pension, wind the pension back to accumulation phase. The fund will make you take a prorated minimum for your age out as a pension payment, which you may have already met. Your pension account goes back to accumulation, you put in your new cash, and then you start your pension again. So whilst we say you can't add to a pension when it's going, you can stop a pension, add money to a pension and turn it back on, or you can open another account and run one next to the pension account to receive contributions, either yours or from an employer, to address exactly that scenario.
So if you want to switch your pension off, make a contribution and then switch your pension back on again, how easy is that to do? Is it just like flicking a switch?
It's a fairly cumbersome paper switch, yeah, but you can. You'd go to your provider and say, look, I want to wind this back to accumulation. And then they will say, okay, from the day that you started the pension, let's say you started on the 1st of July, have you taken the prorated minimum percentage for your age, which you have to do with an account-based pension? So if you have, they will stop the pension, wind it back, nothing happens to your underlying assets, and you go back to accumulation phase. You can then add your money, then you'd need to fill out another form or fill out online, depending on what your fund does, and start another income stream with the new capital balance that's been in there. You may, depending on your tax scenario, you may be better off leaving the existing pension going, starting a new super fund, making a large non-concessional contribution and running a second pension next to the first pension. Now that scenario would be really appropriate where you're trying to separate taxable and tax-free components inside super to manage the estate implications of you dying for your adult children. So I think the worst thing people can do is think that having one fund is the best way to do it, especially where you're making large non-concessional contributions that would be treated as a tax-free payment to children in the event that you passed. Running two funds may strategically save you a lot of money and keep your administration relatively simple. Could you put it all into one fund? Yeah. Is it going to kill you? No. Are you leaving opportunity strategically on the table for later? Very much so. So think about, can I put it in? Think about, how am I going to put it in? Then think about, where am I going to put it? Because putting it into your existing account may not be the best place for it. So there's a few things to consider, but also don't assume that you can't do it because you could be missing out on strategically a lot of benefit.
I know some people worry about running more than one account, though. They think that means there's going to be more fees.
Yeah, look, not necessarily. I think it's a very naive way of looking at it because a lot of good retail funds now have combined pricing administratively across multiple accounts. So, for example, BT will charge you 0.15 up to $1 million, and they'll apply that to as many accounts as you have. And as soon as you go over that threshold, they charge you no more. So it could actually be cheaper and there'll be no change to your admin structure, but the benefit for the next generation in that example could be hugely significant because of the strategic options that you could take advantage of between the age that you make the contribution and 75 to pass on as much tax-free money as possible to the next generation. So I don't think people should look at what is the admin cost of doing it. I think strategically they need to understand the benefit of multiple funds because there are a raft of reasons where you would run multiple funds, multiple pensions, and it's about getting that holistic advice so that you don't leave opportunities on the table.
Broadly speaking, if you've got, say, for example, $1 million worth of assets and you've got it all in one fund, the fee is a percentage, but if you put it in two funds, it's $500,000 in each. It's still the same percentage of the same total.
There you go. So again, we've just debunked the sort of limited thinking around more is worse. Well, as you say, 6 and 2 3s. It's not going to be that different. But what are the tax implications? What are the investment implications? What are the franking credit implications? What's the tax or accumulation implications? There's far more to consider than what's the admin fee of the fund I'm going to run, because that's like the wheels on the car.
Luke Smith from Envision Financial is with me in the studio and once again has introduced the car metaphor into his financial advice. Today we're talking about adding money to super, when and how. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Luke Smith from Envision Financial is with me in the studio today and we're talking about adding money to super. Who can do it and when can they do it? Luke, what are the key things people need to remember?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to think about is, why am I putting it in? Is it deductible, not deductible? Where am I going to put it? And then how much am I going to direct into the various fund that you choose? We also need to assume that, as we said before the outbreak, having an all-in-one fund may not be the best place for it. And that's not to say use 3 or 4 different providers. It may be that you stay with your provider but run multiple accounts with your provider, assuming that they let you. Some funds won't let you have 2 accumulation accounts, but they don't understand the strategic benefit of what you're trying to achieve. That's just an administrative flaw of their process. That happens with a lot of industry funds. They're very good at ringing clients and saying, "Oh, just roll them together, it's better." Well, you've got no idea why we're separating them, so don't even bother getting involved. So when you know, am I eligible? Check and see, because again, the assumption that you can't could cost you money. Under 67, you can make a deductible contribution, no work test. Over 67, you can make a deductible contribution. You just have to meet the work test. So you've got to do 40 hours of work in 30 days. You can make a non-concessional contribution up to 75. You can make a non-concessional contribution, but you must consider your total super balance, because that will determine how much of your $360,000 bring forward cap you can use. So again, there are a few hurdles here, like we mentioned earlier. Don't just assume that because you're under the age bracket, you can do it. There are a few that you need to tick off to get everything correct. Think about where it's going to go. Think about when you're going to put it in. Think about how you put it in. Do I put in cash? Do I make a non-concessional contribution by transferring assets into super? So you can move assets into super as an in-specie transfer, which means I have CBA shares in my own name and I move them to superannuation as CBA shares. I don't necessarily cash them out and buy them back. It's called an in-specie transfer. Now, yes, you are selling in that scenario, so consider the tax implications of selling, because a transfer is treated the same as a sale because you're changing the beneficial owner. Okay, so again, just because I can doesn't necessarily mean I should. Because if you paid $25 for CBA shares, you're going to be staring down the barrel of a massive capital gain. But you might have $50,000, $80,000 of catch-up concessional space where you could put cash into superannuation and offset that capital gain, as we've spoken about in multiple shows. The catch-up concessional legislation is great where you want a massive deduction in the year that you have accelerated income. But just make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. Make sure that your paperwork is on point. Have I lodged a notice of intent for the concessional contribution? That way you know that you're not going to miss out or have any surprises or have tears because you haven't followed the right rules and regs that's directed to you by your provider. So as long as people keep that in mind, they'll be able to make the most of getting money into super. And I think the worst thing people can do is assume that they can't without investigating their true eligibility first, and then decide on when and what type and the paperwork that's required to get you there.
Luke, where can listeners get more information?
Yeah, office number 6260-4749. We've got envisionfinancial.com.au on the internet. We've got the Strategy Stack and Luke Talks Money on iTunes and Spotify. We've got YouTube, Envision Financial Canberra. We've got over 400 shows now that we have a back catalogue of just about everything. And we have a chapter in Smart Money Strategy, your ultimate guide to financial planning on all types of contributions.
Fantastic. Luke, have a wonderful week. We'll catch you next Friday.
See you next week.
Luke Smith from Envision Financial back with us in the studio at the same time next Friday afternoon, right here on 2CC.